As President Trump is now closing in on the 100-day mark of his second term, that's this Tuesday. A new CNN poll out this morning shows his approval rating dropping to 41%. That is the lowest for any newly elected president at the 100-day mark in at least 7 decades. Keep in mind here, too, it is not just his overall approval numbers that are on the decline. The president's handling of foreign affairs is now at 39% approval. That's down from 42% just last month. And it comes as the Trump administration's top diplomat, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, says this will be a, quote, very critical week in determining whether the U.S. will continue its efforts to broker peace between Russia and Ukraine. CNN senior White House reporter Kevin Liptak joining us now. So in terms of this week ahead of high-stakes diplomacy, what more can you tell us about what is on deck?
Well, I think it's clear that the president is getting frustrated that his attempts to broker an end to this war have so far not borne fruit. Remember, he said he'd be able to do it within 24 hours of taking office. Now we're butting up on the 100-day mark, and it's clear that Trump and members of his team are concerned that this could all be essentially a waste of their time. And so it is setting up quite a critical stretch of days. We heard today from Marco Rubio saying that this will be the week that President Trump decides whether to continue these efforts to pursue a negotiated settlement in Ukraine or to move on to other issues. Listen to more of the top diplomat.
This is going to be a very critical week. This week is going to be a really important week in which we have to make a determination about whether this is an endeavor that we want to continue to be involved in, or if it's time to sort of focus on some other issues that are equally, if not more important in some cases. But we want to see it happen. There are reasons to be optimistic, but there are reasons to be realistic, of course, as well. We're close, but we're not close enough.
Now, in some ways, this is not a new message from Rubio. He has said before that time is vanishingly short to try and reach an end to this war. What's not necessarily clear is whether this is a negotiating tactic to try and put pressure on Ukraine and Russia, or whether Trump and his team are serious about walking away from these talks. And Rubio's telling, this past week was an opportunity for them to try and ascertain exactly how serious both sides of this are. You had Steve Witkoff, the president's foreign envoy in Moscow, talking to Vladimir Putin. You also had U.S. officials talking with their Ukrainian counterparts in London. But it's not clear, as of this morning, how close the two sides are to coming to some kind of deal. We heard from the Russian foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, who said that there was still some fine-tuning to do on this peace plan. We've also heard from Volodymyr Zelensky, the Ukrainian president, who says that he can't sign off on a number of the American proposals that are in place to try and end this war. Certainly the fear among among European officials is that Putin is just trying to string these talks along. He thinks that time is on his side. In fact, it sounds as if President Trump may believe that as well, based on his post yesterday when he said that he thought Putin may be tapping him along. I think this all adds up to an uncertain fate for the Ukrainian peace talks, but it will be an important moment, I think, on that 100-day mark if this war has not ended, which it certainly doesn't look like it will be.
Yeah, given that we are 2 days out from that 100-day mark, it would be quite something if we heard of it tomorrow. Kevin, really appreciate it. Thank you. Also joining me this hour, David Sanger, CNN political and national security analyst. David, as we look at all of this, I think Kevin makes a really good point that the question now is, seeing these repeated comments from Secretary Rubio. Just about 10 days, a week ago, it was, we could leave this in a matter of days. Now he says this is basically a make or break week. Is it your sense, based on your sources, that this is in fact more of a negotiation move on the part of the White House, on the part of the administration, to put pressure on Russia? Or does it really mean it could be days away from the U.S. walking out?
Well, Erica, they want to put pressure on both parties. I'm not sure they're actually as interested in putting the pressure on Russia as they are on Mr. Zelensky, who obviously met here in Rome yesterday with President Trump. The reason I say that is that Mr. Zelensky is passing around an alternative peace treaty proposal, or at least ceasefire proposal, one that would put much greater burden on Russia, including Russia paying reparations to Ukraine, one in which the territory issues are kicked down the road some, one in which Russia would basically have to let Ukraine build up a security presence to keep the Russian forces from taking over the rest of the country at some point in the future. And I think that President Trump has looked at that and realized Vladimir Putin is going to reject this. So he's trying to find some kind of a middle ground. My own view is that President Trump isn't that concerned about what the details of a ceasefire are, as long as he can get the ceasefire and move to his bigger objective, which is to normalize relations with Russia, get Ukraine off the table.
You know, it's interesting, too. I noticed in that interview today on Meet the Press, Secretary Rubio almost downplaying the lack of penalties on Russia. He was asked specifically, Kristen, asking him about what about, you know, these new Russian sanctions? What would that mean? He says adding any sanctions now, all that would do would really prolong the war. Take a closer listen.
We're still hoping to see that this effort works out in diplomacy and that we can bring these two sides closer together. I mean, the minute you start doing that kind of stuff, you're walking away from it. You've now doomed yourself to another 2 years of war, and we don't want to see it happen.
He says they don't want to get there. I mean, later in the interview, he did say more than once, both sides need to get something. Both sides needs to give something up. But again, you know, sort of to your point, it is this question about, is this really about preserving or somehow, I guess, improving the relationship between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin?
So I think one of the most interesting parts of Secretary Rubio's statement there, Erica, is that there's not a whole lot of utility right now for them in putting more sanctions on Russia. And the Russians know it. And there's not a lot left to sanction. When the president was saying the other day, maybe we'll put tariffs on Russian goods. Well, we're not importing any Russian goods. We haven't been for years. Even before the war broke out, there wasn't much that Russia made that we wanted. So that's a pretty empty threat, and Putin knows it. The bigger opportunity here is to open up with Russia, I think in the president's mind, to get American oil companies in, to get gas flowing again, all areas where the U.S. could profit. And of course, that's the way he looks at Ukraine as well, with the great yet unsigned minerals agreement, which the president, you may remember, said was going to be signed last Thursday, and that was gone too.
Yeah. Yeah, there is a lot there. That is for sure. And to be a fly on the wall in any of those conversations, but specifically between the two presidents there, the Vatican. Yeah. David, really appreciate it as always. Thank you.